Hey guys, welcome to the Unscripted Success podcast, where I invite amazing guests that have taken the road less traveled, and together we field your questions from the community on topics related to career and business. Today, I have Dan Coe. Dan, publicly his name is Dan Coe. He has a passion for business, people, and residential real estate. He enjoys also driving, travel, nature, self-improvement, and taking on responsibility for the well-being of others. Dan, how's it going?
Pretty good. How you doing today, Braxton?
Good, man. Thank you. I'm so excited to have you here. And yeah, what I know about your background and kind of what you do for a living has made me really excited to kind of jump into the podcast today. So yeah, before I jump into the questions that we have, I always just like to open up the podcast and give my guests an opportunity to share whatever they would like about themselves, about what they're passionate about. So I don't know if you have anything to say at all.
You know, honestly, lately, all I really think about is work. It's a lot of work. So you got to kind of prompt me into something else, I guess.
Gotcha. How about you share more about what you do?
You know, lately, it's really a lot of focus on our auto glass company. Prior to just 4 weeks ago, my dad was actually managing the phones here, and we just got to a point where it was kind of time for him to let go. And so now I've taken over the phones, and, you know, we've got one main installer here other than myself, and it's just been a lot. You know, I'm here at 7 a.m, usually till 7 at night, and, you know, that's 5 days a week, and then weekend comes, and then I jump into the real estate, just trying to make sure that stuff's kind of okay, and any other loose ends I got to pick up.
Yeah, those loose ends are what gets us sometimes, I think.
It's constant. I mean, here's one I had today. I got a text message from a resident about a busted shock on a door, and I'm just, you know, I'm like sitting here rolling my eye. That shock on that door has broke like 10 times. I mean, I've even put double shocks on. There's just nothing I can do. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Make sure it's shut all the way. That's not what I tell them, but, you know, it's just a frustrating thing when you see those same things popping up over and over again.
Right. Yeah. I know you and I are connected on social media, and I'm sure you would agree that, like, sometimes you just see people post stuff or asking questions in Facebook groups or something, like, this is a Google, like, go to Google. Really? Like, do we really be asking this?
I get it too. It's like, I get not knowing things, even if they're really simple, and wanting to ask for that help. But yeah, you see the question enough times, and it's like, I'm going to scroll right by this.
Right. Yeah. Don't feel like helping this. Go to Google. That's awesome. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate that. Are you ready to dive into some questions?
Yeah. Well, what do you got for me?
Cool. So this first one comes from a director, and he says, I've been trying to broaden my skill set beyond my engineering and architecture experience, but I inevitably fall back into it because there's a need, and then winding up stuck there again. Any advice for how to get out of the rut?
Yeah, give yourself responsibility. I mean, that's, I had a lot of stuff that I don't know how to do, and then I just decide to jump into it, and then you have to learn. You don't really have an option. You just have to jump in and do it.
I'm looking at this question, and it's like, I'm seeing a vicious cycle here a little bit. He keeps saying that he keeps falling back into it. And I'm like, well, it's something that I ask my coaching clients a lot that very few actually have the ability to answer is, what is it that you want to do all day?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
that's an excellent point. Yeah, no,
yeah.
That's, I feel like one of the things that I tell people, it's like all life really is, it's how we choose to spend our time, right? You know, and there's only so much time. So what are you going to do with it?
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, like, I mean, you keep saying you're falling back into it. Well, you're probably falling back into it because you're not really building a concrete plan for yourself on how to stop falling back into it, you know?
Yeah. Like has he left yet? You know, right? Just been a thought. Has he actually jumped into something else for a little while and then gets pulled back in? Or I think there's some more questions to be answered to give a better response to that one.
Yeah. I think also, I mean, it makes you wonder. I look at this and I don't think it applies to just engineering or architecture either, but like a lot of people talk about like what the golden handcuffs are. People allow themselves to be stuck in a rut because the money's too good or the benefits are too good or whatever, but you end up being miserable. I remember way back in the day, years ago, I used to work in the oil field, and it was because I fumbled around in my career, not sure what it was I wanted to do. So I took a job in the oil field. I uprooted my family and moved 2 states away because I thought the money was worth it. After 18 months, I decided the money was not worth it. So, at all. So like without a plan, I was like, I am not coming back to this. And so I quit the gig, and, you know, we even moved in with my mother-in-law for about 3 months till I could figure out what I wanted to do, really. I think the other thing is he sounds like he's a little paralyzed by not being fully committed to taking. So I don't know. I don't know if you've ever lived something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if I've had that kind of experience. I mean, I've throughout my life, I've kind of just jumped from thing to thing to thing, and I do it as long as I'm enjoying it and enjoying how I'm spending my time. And there's just a point if you're not enjoying it for enough days in a row, you know, like let's find something else. What sparks that passion?
And so you personally, for you, Dan, you feel like you've never been stuck in a rut for too long? Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, I feel like I'm stuck in a rut right now, but it's just I've taken on so much, and just someone has to do it, and I would rather do it than stop, you know. So we go and go and go. I mean, like I was saying, I'm 7 a.m. to 7 at night, or last night I got home at 10:50 maybe, and I get a little bit of time before I go to bed, and then I'm up and out the door again. But you know, it's I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I know what I'm working towards, and I'm still excited to get up in the morning. And it's just, you know, you do what you have to do because nobody else is going to.
Yeah, you still feel that drive, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, I absolutely
love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of exciting, right? Like, and you know, I feel a little overworked, a little overwhelmed sometimes. But then there's people that they're bored; they don't even know what to do with their time. Like that doesn't sound very fun to me either. So,
staying busy to avoid being bored. I love it. Question number 2, this is from a communications specialist. And so again, I think one thing, a lot of these people talk about, just as a side note, a lot of people send me questions that they mention like what they do for a living, but a lot of times I think our response is it really doesn't matter what their craft is, because I think the issue tends to be universal. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. But this is a communications specialist. They say, I'm in a thriving agency career, but I've always felt at odds with maintaining my health due to a severe autoimmune disease. Unexpectedly, my friend alerted me marketing a chief marketing officer position at a nonprofit where they know the CEO. I'm interested in it because this nonprofit is a foundation that specifically drives awareness and funding for the same medical condition that I have. Curious if you guys have any thoughts about a jump to or away from nonprofits and any words of wisdom to offer. So I don't know, Dan, have you ever worked with nonprofits at all?
I guess it would just be kind of, you know, how happy are you with what you're doing currently, and how much do you think that might change for you when you make that jump? And you know, do you have an option to go back, or do you want to make a career out of you know, kind of the field with the nonprofit? Or I think this goes back to something you said with the previous question, like what is it that's driving? And so it sounds like this person has something that resonates with them. They have a unique medical condition, which I don't know what it is, but this foundation takes care of it. That sounds like there's a thread of passion there, which I think can translate into having motivation and drive to pursue it. So I think in that regard, it's exactly what you were saying before. Like, what is it that gets you going, and what makes you willing? What lights your eyes up? What gets you to jump out of bed every day, where you're willing and have no problem working from 7 a.m. till 10 o'clock at night sometimes, like, right? I think like so if this person is waking up in the morning and they're not excited about what they're doing every day at their current job anyway, I don't think it's necessarily going to hurt you to switch. I mean, I don't know the finances or what the pay differences may be or not, but to me, again, we have limited time. So yeah, if you're not excited and enjoying your life, or at least working towards something that you know is going to mean a lot to you, I don't think it hurts to try something else.
Yeah, I agree. There's that statistic. I don't remember. I'm going to butcher it, but there was a statistic I heard sometime that, you know, when most people reach the end of their life, the things that they say that they regret are not the things that they did, but the things they didn't do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think taking that leap, I mean, I took it, like I was talking about in the question before with working in the oil field, I took that leap because first I wanted to support my family. That was the biggest reason. But also, like, I'm grateful for that experience, even though I truly ended up hating it, like with a passion, like being overworked, working 7 nights, sometimes 14 nights in a row, 14-hour shifts. And like, I'm so grateful for that experience because it showed me what I didn't want to do. You know what I mean? And so like,
absolutely.
Even if you take that leap and it doesn't work out, sometimes we got to do that. Sometimes we have to fall just flat on our face and figure out how we're going to pick ourselves up.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Question number 3. This comes from a senior business analyst. He says, my company put me in charge of an incredibly difficult customer. Maybe you can relate to this. I'm losing. You're laughing already. Incredibly difficult customer. I'm losing my sanity, but the company is banking on the success of this customer. I'm at the point that I do not even want to work here anymore. I feel a sense of weird obligation to this company and to the income, while at the same time I'm verging on an anxiety attack. Also, before this customer was in our pipeline, I candidly told my director that our production process will not scale well if we were to suddenly bring on a large volume of business. And they obviously didn't care because now I'm dealing with this client. What would you guys do?
You know, That's a tough one. To me, it sounds like the company probably made a bad move. They probably put the wrong person in charge of that customer. I know both of my companies, we have relatively low staff, but I do try to listen to my staff. Like I want to put people in positions doing the things that I know they enjoy, that they're good at. It doesn't always work out that way, but I'm really not trying to put people in positions that give them a level of anxiety that they're practically ready to leave the company. I mean, if you're at that level, that to me would just be communicating to whoever's in charge and just saying, look, at this is not for me. I'm not the right person for this. Can we just give this to someone else?
That to me, that's a huge leadership skill, right? Being able to recognize, I used to work at a tech company, and the term we used often around this subject is your native genius. And so that's something we used to always, but that was a word that got thrown around constantly. Like, what's your native genius? How are you, enjoying your job using your native genius? Things like that was the conversation. And I think that's the true sign of a leader. And there's probably many, but the true sign of a leader is someone that recognizes the natural strengths that their team has. And on top of not recognizing that in this person, the leadership at this company is also they have their frontline workers, basically. They're in the weeds, boots on the ground, helping customers. This person is saying there's a problem, and leadership is just saying, meh, don't really care, go deal with it anyway.
Well, and they're saying it's a really important customer that really needs to be taken care of, and then they're not listening to the staff when the staff says, I'm not the person for this particular job. I think that's terrible leadership. I think whoever is running that company, if it's that important of a customer, make the call yourself, talk to them yourself, build that relationship yourself. You shouldn't be putting things that are very important on someone who is having, a lot of anxiety about it. It's just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. You have someone that's admittedly coming to you and saying, look, I kind of might be the weakest link in this situation. And your response is to give them the very thing that is giving them anxiety. That doesn't make sense to me. But that's an excellent point, Dan. This is a very important client. Let's give it to this person. Makes total sense. Absolutely. That's awesome. Cool, man. All right. Question number 4. This is from a senior manager at Amazon, actually. So this will be interesting. They say, I make $250K in my current role, and I'm being offered a job as a chief procurement officer at a different company. And the pay is about the same. Would it be worth to the new title if I like my current role? Can the title change eventually lead to a 7-figure pivot? So kind of 2 questions there. I'm sitting here thinking this goes back to my question, or what I said earlier, what is it that you want to do all day?
That's kind of a tough question. I mean, if you like what you're already doing, but you see the potential growth in the other position, I don't know. It's one of those things, you make the decision and maybe it goes well, maybe it doesn't. I feel like I would need more details to make that decision.
Yeah.
Because who knows, even if there is potential growth at the other company, what if you just get a manager that you really can't stand, that it just doesn't work out? If it's working out where you're at, I might even use that as some bargaining where I'm at currently. I don't know exactly how I would approach it, but it would just be the idea that I do have other options. What's my growth potential here, or what can I work towards here? Even going to your boss and show me what I could do to increase my value, X amount. Or
I'm looking at this, I'm just a little bit about me, my background. I've always found myself, the reason why I always end up leaving a job before I started my own businesses was because I always felt either I didn't know where I stand with my company, or I was feeling bored or not engaged in my company at all. And so I didn't feel challenged, basically. And so I'm sitting here wondering, where would this person be more engaged? And if they can find themselves, if they have an idea of what the new company would offer in terms of what they'd be doing, what the challenge is, that's personally for me, that's what I look for.
That makes a lot of sense. So maybe that's one of the reasons they're even asking the question. Maybe they're not feeling as engaged where they're at, and maybe it wouldn't be a bad move.
Yeah.
Well, and two, if they make the move and it works out great, that's a lot of potential. And if they make the move and it doesn't work out great, do they still have other places they can go or other options? And if they still have other options and they're not totally feeling it where they're at, maybe why not try it out?
I think this is a issue that a lot of people struggle with, and it's a topic of what we call in business an opportunity, right? And so I don't want to make this decision at the expense of another decision or another opportunity, right? And I think it's easy, whether in business or just in a traditional career path. I think a lot of people struggle with that, and it seems to me that's what they're struggling with, is they want some guarantee handed to them almost on a silver platter saying, oh, like unless it's X, Y, and Z, then I can't make that leap. And that the thing is like, where in life does that really happen?
Yeah, you don't really get a lot of that. It's again, limited time. So you got to choose where you want to spend your time. And yeah, if you're not engaged enough where you're at, or just like I was saying before, if you're not waking up in the mornings and excited about how you're spending your days, even outside of the money, that to me is a sign that it wouldn't be a bad idea to change something.
Yeah. And I think we also like I said earlier, like we regret the things we didn't do and the things that we did do, right? And so like I would hate going through life always asking myself the question, what if I did take that job? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like that would right there, that's almost why I'm always willing to make the leap, because I don't ever want to have wonder what could have been. So, yeah. Like
it'd be 30, 40 years down the road, just still asking yourself that same question. That'd eat me alive.
And I think like I look at my career coaching company, like when I started, I was like, I don't even know if I should really, like, this is something I'm passionate about. This is something that I think the world needs to hear, but I honestly didn't know, like, I didn't know where I was going to take it. I didn't have a concrete plan of what I was going to do. And like, I mean, I'm 3 years into this business, and without tooting my own horn, like I've been able to coach, like I had a client that was a Hollywood producer, crazy to me that like that was a client of mine. And then like down the road even more, I've had clients that worked at tech companies. They were like vice presidents of Coinbase and Reddit. And just the other day, I got off the phone with a client. She's in marketing, but she does marketing for brands. And so she's done projects with Hugh Jackman and who else? Courtney Cox and Brooke Shields and all these like A-list celebrities. And I'm like, I'm coaching you. And so like, that's the thing is like, 3 years ago, I would have never thought a million years that those would be the people that would come to me for a specific kind of help. And so that's why I say I'm always the one to take the leap, and, I'll give it a year and find out what happens and then pivot from there if I need to. But it's so important, I think, and just to not live with regret, at least for me, like that's my case. And so that would be my advice to this individual, is to not put yourself in a position that you'll regret.
Don't pass something up that maybe you were really interested in and then have to think about it later. I mean, for me too, I like personal growth. I like development. So I tell myself when I'm facing questions like that, it's like, so even if everything like went wrong, like say nothing works out, everything goes the opposite way of where you'd like it to, will I grow? Will I learn things? Will I be a better person for it? If I get enough yeses out of those kinds of questions, it's like, go for it. You know what? Well, what's the worst that happens? I mean, I'm an entrepreneur, so it's my stuff is always kind of like, well, I go broke. That's my worst case scenario, right? I lose it all, but you lose the money maybe. I'm granted if I don't have any, life-threatening situations or horrible illnesses or something, I don't lose what I've learned. I don't lose the knowledge. So I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, I like new experiences, and I like.
I think sometimes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just say you got one life, live it. Don't sit there regretting things. Use your time wisely. It's all you have.
Absolutely. I think like sometimes we have opportunities come to us and they don't pan out, and sometimes it's because of our own weaknesses or our own limitations. And don't think about the fact that like if this is the first time you're getting an opportunity like that, part of life and part of the process is screwing up those opportunities so that you can learn from them. So the next time one presents itself, you know what to do. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? Yep. You're never going to get the first one right. And so just be prepared to like accept defeat on it, but learn from it so that you don't have to accept defeat on the next one.
Yeah.
Love it. Cool, man. I love your perspective on that. Okay. Last question. This is from a director. They don't say of what or at what, but they say, my company announced I would be stepping into my boss's job alongside one of my peers. And this is a co-leadership position. So now I'm thinking like it's Michael and Jim on The Office. I don't know if you've seen those episodes, but
yeah, when you say co-leadership, that sounds like trouble to me.
Right.
Anytime I've tried to give people like shared responsibility over a nightmare. But let's hear the question, right?
Yeah.
Let's hear what we've got.
So they say we began the transition for it to be effective later this year. More recently, I breached the topic of compensation for the new role, as this was never mentioned with the announced promotion. A month later, right? A month later, they announced a singular leadership model at my company, and my peer would be the one to be elevated in that role, and I would stay in my old job. This smacks of retaliation. What are your thoughts?
I mean, my first thought is annoyed, right? I would be definitely annoyed to have that announced and then have it go the other way. Yeah, I don't know. How about you? What do you think on that one?
Yeah, like thinking of retaliation, I think there's always a chance, but if I'm looking at like, if it were just that one position, because they made the comment, a singular leadership model was announced. So that sounds like it's company wide. If it were just for that role, then I would think, yeah, maybe something's going on here. But if it's the whole company, then it's like, it just sounds like bad timing. So, but to your point, like I was thinking the same thing as soon as I read that first sentence, like co-managing, come on. Like,
I mean, I'll give you an example.
Oh yeah.
The guests will like these examples, but with real estate, even just managing some smaller stuff like duplexes, like you get a duplex, you get two families living in one house, one property. Now, if you don't give if you don't handle lawn care as the manager or the owner or whatever, and you have one of the residents do it, don't ask both of them to do it. Don't tell both that it's their responsibility, because you will just get messages and phone calls around that they're not doing enough. I did this, they didn't do that. It's ridiculous. And then you just end up in this whole little petty thing back and forth. And it's like, you need to make a decision, give the responsibility to one person, and then that's what it is. And then there's no questions and there's no back and forth about it.
Yeah. Don't put yourself in a position where you have to be mom and dad.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, that was actually a lot of my early career in real estate. Just, man, it's rough. So you can probably relate to this too, but it's like I was 25 when I bought my first property, and just realizing that now I have to train people, and sometimes people that are twice my age, and I have to train them how to manage living somewhere, how to deal with their neighbors, how to do a bunch of things I didn't even know how to do at the time. And it's just interesting how much a lot of people really need hand-holding, and they need direction. A lot of people really need direction. And if you can't give them that, then it ends up being a lot of problems in my experience.
Yeah. It sounds like the question, like if I'm reading between the lines, the question that this person's asking is like, how do I make this right for myself almost? And I'm sitting here thinking like this, I don't see this as a question of being made right for yourself. I think this is a question of leadership again. Like we were talking about leadership earlier. Why on earth would it's one thing to have co-managers or co-leadership in whatever this organization is, but then to like completely whitewash that whole concept and change the entire infrastructure of your company, like on a whim, it seems like, even though it probably wasn't, that's just what it sounds like.
It sounds like they don't like that they didn't get the role, or they felt like it was a slap in the face that they didn't get the role. And what do you do about that, right? You if you have an issue with it, probably say it to somebody. One of the things I say often is the truth is usually good enough. Like there's no reason to lie or hide anything. Like honesty is usually good enough. So if you're honestly not feeling good about how things panned out, say something to someone, and then you need to decide, like, is that enough of an offense that you're willing to leave and go to another company or look for another job? Or is it something that you're okay with accepting and moving forward, and maybe you'll get another opportunity in the future? It's like you got to define your own boundaries and what you are or not okay with. And I mean, if you think you're the kind of person that would do really good in a position like that, and that would mean a lot to you, tell somebody that. And if they don't want to hear you, scout other jobs, Yeah.
You made the comment about like setting your boundaries. That's one thing I always teach my coaching clients. It seems like I always end up explaining to them is like, what's your line in the sand, right? And by that, what I mean is like, what are like deal breakers? What are the non-negotiables? Like, so you have to decide. And a lot of people don't ask themselves this question in their career, in their business or whatever. And I think it's a misstep a little bit. Like, what is like a hard no? And they end up in situations like this because, first of all, like, what kind of company was this where you had co-leadership? I would imagine it's dysfunctional to some extent, as you and I both know.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be dysfunctional in the first place. So why would you want to entertain the idea of aspiring for that type of role and be okay with it when you're witnessing the dysfunction happening around you as it is? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a good decision by the company to go with singular leadership. But now, I don't know if it was a good decision to choose the other person over this individual or not. I don't know those details, but I would definitely say singular leadership.
Yeah, I think in a way it sucks, but I think the company did them a favor because now they have, to me, this makes the path to growth in that company more defined almost. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's more clear rather than having to figure out which one of the two is going to make this, I just think That's asking for trouble.
I like what you said too about drawing a line in the sand. Like not enough people, I think, do that. I would assume in your conversations with people about that, most haven't thought about it or don't even want to. Like people don't want to draw a line in the sand because it brings more personal responsibility and accountability into it. Now, if someone crosses your boundary, they cross your line, what are you willing to lose for that? Like that's a big question because it can be a lot. I mean, you can have a lot on the line. You could have a 10-year marriage that's on the line over a boundary getting crossed, or you could have a 20-year career. You could have a friendship, whatever it is. But yeah, I think it is important that people develop boundaries and accept that and be willing to take those losses sometimes. And I think people would find if they would do that, people would respect them more for it. And oftentimes people will respect those boundaries. If the relationship they have with you or whatever it is important enough, they will usually respect that, unless make your boundaries a little ridiculous. And maybe you'll learn that on the back end. But either way, like be willing to draw boundaries. And it's very important.
Yeah, I agree. Early on in my career, before I even had the notion of starting a business for myself, like I was the one that was like, okay, yeah, you always do things that's good for the company. It's for the good of the company, or, things like that. And it's the company that tends to indoctrinate you with that notion in the first place. But
I tell my employees that stuff. Come on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We want to do things that are good for the company around here.
For sure. And I just think, but yeah, and totally, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes, I can see companies like this taking it too far and turning it into a weapon, where it's not always a weapon, but sometimes companies like this, where it's a co-leadership thing, oh, you're getting demoted now for the good of the company, right? It's conversations like that tend to happen sometimes. And what I've learned just personally for myself, that what I've observed is I used to be I'm a product of homeschool. You know what I mean? I don't know if you know that about me, Dan, but I was a homeschool kid. I didn't graduate high school. I didn't do anything. And so I was kind of the shy, introverted kid as well for the longest time, even into my, early 20s. And being in my early 20s and trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do for a living and trying to navigate my career, being who that person was, caused me to get taken advantage of a lot in my career.
Okay.
It caused me to, and so it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. Sometimes you just have to fall on your face long enough times to learn your lesson, kind of. And I feel like that's what happened to me. So yeah, going back to leadership, and you and I were talking about drawing your line in the sand and what the boundaries are. You have to set that up because you will be taken advantage. That's the biggest thing I learned. I've had jobs completely misrepresented to me, and I took them, and I let myself get strung along in that job for far too long, with all the promises made to me about that job never coming to fruition. And it's because I didn't value myself or respect myself enough to stand up for myself or really do my due diligence about it in the first place. And I think that's where go ahead.
I'll give you a great example of that. I'll give you a great example. When I took over this glass company, that was last year, January, I went to hire an install tech right away. And the first tech that I hired, he was really excited, seemed to have a really good attitude. I don't know how much hiring you've done. Hiring's an interesting one, right? It doesn't matter how many interviews, what they seem like. You don't know until they're working the job. You just don't know. They don't really either. The employees aren't going to know either. They don't know how you are until they've worked for you or with you or whatever you want to call it. And so I hired this guy, and I hired him under the premise that there may be an option for some ownership down the road. Now in my head, and what I told him was yeah, give me 5 to 6 good years. And hey, if that all goes well, I think it could be a really great option. But he obsessed about it. He could not stop thinking about it. He would talk with my customers about it 24/7. And he didn't really have the maturity level to even be in that kind of role. And now I could have kept stringing him along maybe and oh yeah, that'll definitely be a thing. I'm not really that kind of person, but this is one of those, you have to draw the line in the sand and be willing to lose something, right? So I was very busy at the time with my real estate company. I did not have time to do tech work at this auto glass company, but it became such an overwhelming issue how much he wanted ownership, and he's demanding it 6 months in. And I'm look, I give you my my word, even if you stay here 5-6 years and you're awesome at what you do, I will never give you ownership in this company. And I wanted it off the table. And I knew that meant that I would probably lose him, but it was just like, I need you to realize that is not a good thought in your head. And either you're willing to keep doing this job, knowing that that's no longer an option, or for both of our sake, you're just going to move on. And he did, and he moved on. You know, he quit a month later or something like that. Not even the greatest how it went down, but it just, you know, and I had to just come in here and do the tech work and work twice as hard, and it kicked my butt, and it, you know, whatever. Well, what are you going to do? I'd rather have to work harder than have to be in a situation where a guy feels like I'm leading him on and taking advantage of him. I'll just put it out there right away and just nip it in the bud.
I used to work for the very last job I had before I ever started my business, was for this very type A, fiery redhead woman who like, don't want to stereotype people, but like that, the stereotype fits her to a T. She's probably one of the most intimidating people I've ever had to work. And I love this phrase she used to use. She used to say, let's not keep kicking the can down the road. You know what I mean? And
and
like, yeah. And so like, if you prolong having difficult conversations or prolong getting out of difficult situations like that, then you're just making it 10 times worse with every moment that you let it go by.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
On you and everybody else, right?
Exactly. For everyone involved.
Anybody to do that. Like it wouldn't have been good for that employee to just keep, you know, obsessing about that either, you know? So it's like, yeah, let's just get it done and move on. I think that's the thing that I hear from a lot of business guys and things too. It's like the quicker you can just make a decision and just get it out of the way, you just that much better.
Speed in the marketplace in almost any facet, any form, I think is a good thing.
Make the decision and move on. Even if it turns out it's the wrong decision, well, you'll learn, right? Because you made it.
Yeah. I think it's an underrated skill to just be decisive, honestly. Like, yeah. I have clients that come to me in my software consulting business, and it's like they have trouble, like after they've made the decision to sign up and have us like help them, basically, they have a hard time making decisions for even simple things as like hopping on a call and helping us scope out the next phase of what they're wanting to do and things like that. And maybe there's something I can do as a business owner to make that easier. But like people, the struggle to just definitively say, this is what I am, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, or whatever it is, I think is a tremendous skill they have. And I think the people that embrace that and embrace being quick to make decisions, I think that benefits people in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably one of my bigger skills is just making decisions.
Yeah.
And again, they're not always right. I make wrong decisions all the time, but it's just, I'm going to make the decision, move forward, and we'll find out sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Isn't it great? I think also having a good team behind you that understands that and that you can be transparent with about that. You know what I mean? It's like my assistant, she's funny. She always keeps me in check a little bit. She always tells me like, one of my own faults, and I'm probably presenting it right now, but like one of the things I recognize with myself is me personally, I tend to over explain things a lot. And she's like, Braxton, you don't got to talk to me like I'm 5. You know what I mean? And I'm not doing it on purpose. I've found, because of my experience throughout my career, I found it's important to over communicate rather than under. And apparently even I've found a way apparently I found a way to take it even too far myself. But yeah, so like, but I love having that relationship with my assistant in this case, particularly like where she and I have the rapport where she doesn't feel threatened or she's risking something by calling me out on something. And I try to have the integrity, the humility, or whatever you want to call it, to accept it the way it's intended. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, being in business, I mean, it's like I'm here to serve really my staff and my customers. I mean, it's really what it is. And you just that's a lot of it. You know, some guys, they want to get into business and it's like, I want to be the boss and I want to tell everyone what to do. It's not like that. You need to serve all these people and help them and help them do their best. And yeah, once you've been able to build those relationships with the people that are on your team, I mean, it's amazing. I've got great people on my team, and yeah, they all mean a lot to me, and they understand me, so we know how to work together well. They don't have to ask me as many questions. I don't have to say as much to them. Like, yeah, it's really nice when you get a proper team together.
Love it. Cool, man. Well, we're about to wrap up, but there's always one question I like to ask all my guests before we close out the episode. And so if you're ready for it, I'll
hit me with it. Let's go.
So the question is what is one question that I should have asked you where your answer is something that you feel is something that the world needs to hear?
I guess I'd probably ask me, what is important to you lately, or what do you think about a lot lately?
And what would you have?
A broad question, but it's got a direct answer. So
yeah, let's hear it.
So this is maybe a little different than what I might have said in the past, but lately I think a lot about stable societies and just what it takes to create stability in a society. And that's been one of the things that's on my mind a lot. And I never would have considered it the same way in the past, but I think more people should think about that. I think we take a lot of things for granted in society when it's easy. And, people are getting so independent and divided and it's like, but without the whole society kind of working together in a way, what do you have? And I think a lot of what the stable societies comes down to, it's really like stable families and stable communities, it's, I don't like this topic so much. I'm not a religious person or anything like that, but I think some of what religion was trying to do was create stable societies, families and communities that, why did everybody gather in church on Sunday? So that you have to meet and speak with your neighbors face to face. So you have to see them, you have to know the people that you live around that are in your community. And I think when you do that, it makes it more difficult to dislike people as much as some people, it's like, this group doesn't like that group and that group doesn't like this group. It's like, I don't know, if most of you would just talk with one another, we're all just people. Most people get along.
Yeah.
I think it takes a lot for people not to get along face to face.
I love it. Yeah. You and I are on the same wavelength, I think, a little bit in that regard, because you see what's happening in the world and it's like, come on, guys.
It's sad. Yeah. It's like, why do we all want to hate each other? There's no benefit in that. Like trying to be better than the other guy and talk down on them. Or it's like, what does that get us? That doesn't get us anything.
Yeah. So I am transparently, I would consider myself a religious person to some extent. My church has a manifesto, for lack of a better term, that they put out, and they talk about this a little bit in the manifesto. And what it basically says is like, we believe that the core foundation of society is a strong family.
Okay.
When you look at,
exactly.
Yeah. And when you look at, like, I don't know, this is me coming from a kind of a faith and a religious perspective, but if you're one that believes in there being an evil in the world, the devil or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I can see how we're witnessing in society is the thing that the devil or that evil is attacking is a means to break down society. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I think if we all walked out our door and, to your point, we met our neighbors and got to know our neighbors and got to know people in our communities more, even if we are on opposite ends of the political or ideological or religious, spectrum, whatever that is, I think if we actually met people and just talk with each other, we'd realize how much it doesn't actually matter.
We're so sick.
When I married my wife, she comes from a non-religious background for the most part, and politically, her grandparents are they're the complete opposite of what my values and what my views are. But from the day I met her grandparents, they are some of my most favorite people in the world. Like, and I'm not even lying when I say that. You know what I mean? Because do we disagree on political ideologies for almost everything we do? Almost everything. But in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to how we relate to each other, it only matters when, we listen to these, our political overlords and they tell us that it matters. But if we quit listening to that whole, I don't even want to call it, like that whole concept and just met each other and allowed ourselves to get to know each other. Thank you for answering that question. Like, I always love asking that because it gives my guests an opportunity to share something that they really care about and that's really important to them. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. I think that's the perfect way to end the show today. Where is it, if people wanted to connect with you, Dan, where could they find you?
The easiest spot is just Facebook. I'm most active on Facebook and just my personal account. It's just Dan for the first name and then KO for the last name, Danco, Facebook. I mean, I'm out there a few different places. My companies are out there, but that's going to be the easiest place to find me.
And you're definitely active. Like, I see your posts on Facebook all the time, so you're definitely active.
I try to be, when I'm not working, or sometimes I squeeze something in here and there throughout the day. So
cool, man. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And this was great. So I appreciate your perspective and appreciate your value. For the listeners, you have been listening to the Unscripted Success podcast. If you're interested in sending a question into the show to have an expert like myself or Dan answer your question and get unique and unfiltered perspective on it, then go to the show note and click on the link, and there's a spot there where you can send us in your question. We'd be happy to address it over the show. And with that, we'll catch you guys on the next episode.